Hello. This screencast, the fifth in a sequence looking at Butterworth's play Jerusalem, is going to give a quick overview and exploration and perhaps hopefully inspire some wider reading and thought amongst students studying at AS or A2 level into the idea of setting, but specifically forests. Obviously, this is something thrown up by Johnny's great desperate cry towards the end of the play. What the fuck do you think an English forest is for? He cries. He's beaten on all sides by the forces of authority, Fawcett and Parsons. And this is essentially his last gasp. Interestingly, a little later, just before the end of Act 3, he will answer his own question to a degree on page 102 when he's talking in answer to Phaedra. She asks whether he has ever seen fairies, and Johnny launches into what I think of as a eulogy to the woods. He says, I've seen a lot of strange things in this wood. And Butterworth at this point writes, as he often does in the stage direction, a beat, a pause, a silence, a moment to recognise that something important is about to be presented to us. And as we look at what it is on page 102 that Johnny says he's seen, we need to consider how many of these things are actually plausible. Has he really seen a plague of frogs, bees and bats? Well, plague may be excessive, but actually in the wild, why not? Those moments when all the frogs spawn at the same time and so on, and develop. A rainbow hit the earth, set fire to the ground? Well, no. On a realistic level, but metaphorically, conceivably, use of colour. I think my favourite in here is this marvellous metaphor of the morning sun falling on a stag with the 14-point antlers of solid gold. Very unlikely that this was a golden stag, probably as illusory as the golden age that we looked at in the first of these screencasts. But as a moment of visionary beauty, it's unparalleled. Establishes also such a value on this majestic creature, a creature often hunted by civilised people, as sport. But his wood also contains threats, he says. When he stares out at the trees, there's always pairs of eyes out there in the dark, watching. He seems frightened. Later, just before she leaves, Phaedra will also seem frightened. Now, on a simplistic level, she might have seen Troy arriving. But what else might she see when she looks into the woods at the end of Act 2, for example? She's alone on the stage. Society watching. So is it only the animals that we have to fear in the woods? We wonder. Johnny writes of ghosts that he's seen. I wonder what these ghosts are. Are they memories? Are they real ghosts, if such a thing exists? Are they just the faint, fleeting sightings of the nameless people? And we begin to see what the wood now is. The wood is a refuge. It's a hiding place. Women burn love letters. Men dig holes at night. Heaven knows what these men are doing. There's something deeply eerie about this idea, but it's somewhere where people come to hide, where people come to destroy the evidence, as it were. It's also a place of solace and comfort. The girl giving birth with her arms round a tree, this sense of oneness with nature, somehow getting comfort from that. A place to witness the cycle of humanity and nature. First kisses, last kisses, laughing, crying, this idea of the dichotomies that run throughout, run through Johnny's eulogy here. It's as though in many of these actions people are linking, if you like, the modern human condition to a more ancient power. The idea that we're being shown, particularly with the girl here, that people might need to be more in touch with nature in order to attain the comfort and the support of these much older powers than the Kennington Oven Council. His speech ends with what I read as quite a dismissive elves and fairies. It's as though Elves and fairies are fine for popular culture, popular literature. We've already established the Lord of the Rings float taking part in the procession. Elves and fairies. For Johnny, the wood is far more important than a home for elves and fairies, and therefore for us, it should be too. In As You Like It, I'll let you read these and work on this for yourself, but in As You Like It, Shakespeare portrays the wood as very much a place of refuge, but of spiritual rebirth. And as we read the speech, you can go back to it and read the speech. What we get out of this is a sense of equality, a sense that in the wood in Arden, there's reality rather than painted pomp or the voices of flatterers. One's in touch with nature, one can learn from nature. This strikes me as a post-pastoral idea, consciousness developing conscience. One can be made better by a period of exile in the woods. There is spiritual enlightenment to be had in Arden. And in Arden, individuals have the freedom to love. There is also the cross-dressing frisson suggesting some element of homosexual love. However, just as we discussed in the earliest screencast when talking about the pastoral garden, there is still grit in the oyster. Jaques is still melancholy. He presents a sense of something darker. The Duke doesn't see it. Jaques will not go back into civilization with the Duke at the end of the play. I really do recommend reading round As You Like It. Don't engage with reading the whole play, but just reading round As You Like It and finding the ideas that Shakespeare has embedded in Arden, his own local forest in Warwickshire, and looking at how these ideas tie in with what we find in our reading of Jerusalem. But he asks in his question about English woods. I just wonder about other woods, and it's worth thinking about the other, if you like, for me anyway, the other great woods of Europe, the German woods. Back into history, the Teutoburger Forest was a place of utter ill omen for the Romans, even before Varus lost his legions there in a slaughter. They were terrified of the darkness of an evergreen forest. Many of the woods of northern Europe are evergreen, perpetually dark. Cycle of life doesn't really become visible here, whereas in the English wood, with the deciduous trees, maybe things are less threatening. There is the beauty and the rebirth every year. It's visible. They are lighter to the eye. There is the colour imagery, the fact that we go through the bright yellowy green of the young leaves, through the green to the oranges, the reds, and eventual rotting. We have a visible cycle in an English wood. English woods are part of our heritage. Sherwood Forest, for example, where Robin Hood will go to hide out against the forces of evil. The German woods are altogether more scary. Again, another task. Go and look at Grimm's fairy tales and do some research on the use of woods as a place of danger and also of education. But then consider what this can tell us about woods, if woods generally are seen as a metaphor for the mind. Jung, the philosopher, talked about archetypes that create myths, religions, philosophical ideas that influence and set their stamp on whole nations and epochs. And he saw archetypes not just in people, but in objects, such as forests, castles, also in animals, lions, serpents. Well, why not a rooster? We can think about what a rooster signifies. A forest will always carry certain ideas with it in the human experience, if we follow Jung's archetypal forms. Perhaps there is a difference then in the archetype between the English forest and the German forest. What do we see in Rooster's Wood? And then as a game almost, I thought it would be fun to engage with this with my class, and I'm not going to give answers, as it were, now. These are some of the Jungian archetypes, and I wonder what we see in Jerusalem coming from this. And as we look at it, a few will stand out. The child, the father, the mother. The sage, one who has profound knowledge. Is this the professor, although he seems to be mad when he reappears at the end of the play after his LSD trip, wreathed like Lear in flowers? Has he discovered wisdom? Who is the beast? Who is the scapegoat? Who the fool? Lightness and darkness, and so on. I'd like you to think about these and explore them as you read the play. At a very simplistic level, and one worthy of much more thought, English forests seem to act to develop our sense of humanity by experience of nature, whereas German forests present threat, fear, and educate us about the horrors of life. This is possibly what an English forest is for. But if that is going to be the case, then you've got to find evidence of this in the play. This is your task. I hope you enjoy it. As an aside, it's worth just thinking the way that woods and fairy tales and so on can be carried forward even into the 20th century, and I suppose thanks to film now, the 21st. And I finished this PowerPoint with the lyrics of one of the songs from Sondheim's Into the Woods. And this idea that when we go off into the woods, what happens to us? He seemed so nice, he showed me things, many beautiful things I hadn't thought to explore. They were off my path, so I'd never have dared. How could I know what was in store? Though I really got scared, well, excited and scared. Swallowed down a slimy path where lie secrets that I never want to know, and when everything familiar seems to disappear forever. It's nice to know a lot, says Red Riding Hood, and a little bit not. In the woods, the danger, excitement. As you read Jerusalem, you need to be thinking about how each of the characters in this play are using or being used by the woods. I hope that's been interesting. I hope it's been useful. Good luck with your studies, and I hope you come back